Hi, I'd like to thank you all for joining this webinar this morning on the latest additions to Office 365. I'm Jess Meets. I'm from a company called Core. We're a Microsoft consulting services company. We work across a whole range of Microsoft technologies, including Office 365, helping people to implement, to configure, to customize, to integrate, and generally work with Microsoft technologies. I'm also joined by John from Bytes. John, do you want to say a few words?
Sure, good morning. I'm John Gorton, the Microsoft Licensing Practice Manager at Byte Software Services. We were formed in 1982 as a Microsoft licensing reseller. So we are currently the #1 licensing solution provider in the UK, holding over 20% of the Office 365 market share and also 40% on Azure. So we've also got a software asset management team. So we solely focus on software services and volume licensing.
Okay, thank you. So the subject for today's webinar is, of course, the new additions to Office 365. And that means we're not going to be going into some of the more sort of base functionality of the technologies. So I'm hoping you're all at least vaguely familiar with the concept of Office 365. It's a Microsoft Cloud Services offering that provides a number of solutions, including email through Exchange Online, collaboration tools and intranets through SharePoint Online, instant messaging and calling through Skype for Business, the Office tools, Yammer, and a lot more things. As I said, we're not really going into the basics of Office 365 today. If that is a conversation you want to have, if you're looking at moving to the cloud, get in touch with us and we'll happily have that conversation separately. But the focus of today is some of the new developments, the recent changes, things that have been added to the solution. And that's one of the things, because the cloud is so fast, new features turn up all the time. Every month it feels like you're going to Office 365 and there's new capabilities there. So today we're just going to talk through some of these new capabilities, what you can do with them, what they mean to you, and I will be showing you some demos of some of these. And the first one I have on my list is My Analytics. And actually, this is a good example of how fast things move in the cloud, because when we were originally planning this webinar, we were talking about Delve Analytics, and since then Microsoft have changed the name. And actually, I think My Analytics fits it a lot better, because the whole concept of My Analytics is analysing myself as a user, looking at my time, looking at how productive I'm being, how much time I'm spending doing emails, how I'm spending my meetings, and tracking who I'm working with. So I did promise some demos. I'll actually jump out to my desktop now and show you My Analytics. And this is where I have to be very careful where I click, because this is actually genuinely My Analytics of my work. And what's actually happening here is Office 365 is pulling information from Exchange, from my calendar, from my email behaviour, and populating this with information about my behaviour. So at the top we see this banner of my time, and I can see that last week I spent 8 hours in meetings, 4 hours doing email, had quite a good lot of focus time, and only half an hour working outside of my core business hours. So that's not too bad, that's pretty good. But as I come down, I can start seeing who are the people I collaborate with most. And I can see that last week I spent a lot of time with Rashmi. We spent 5 hours collaborating together, and I read all of her emails, which I'm sure she'll be thrilled to know. Whereas Mark, I only actually read about 2/3 of his emails. So you've got this sort of information about who are the people you've worked with, who are the people you're spending your time collaborating with, but also it specifically calls out your manager. So you can see how much time are you spending with your manager, is it one-to-one time, how quickly are you responding to each other. And now we get into the tool actually offering suggestions. Hey, you've not emailed Kat since the 26th of September. Maybe you want to actually drop her an email or arrange her a meeting. And it's making these suggestions of, actually, Don't forget these people. You might want to keep in contact. And I can start then seeing my meeting habits. So this one I find amusing, multitasking in meetings. Basically, this is telling me off for sending emails when it says I should be in a meeting. I can also come down and see how much of my emails get read, how many I read of other people's, how long it takes me to reply. So it took me 4.2 hours on average to reply to people last week, which is not great. And I can see also down here my after hours work, and I can see that I spent half an hour working after hours, and actually 1.4 hours is the company average. So I was doing a little bit better than the average member of my company in terms of work-life balance last week. And this is all, you'll notice that this is all my stuff or company averages. I'm not actually seeing anybody else's. I can't say click on Mark and see how many hours Mark spent doing emails. It's my private analysis. And this is what I think is useful, because it stops it being quite so scary. One of the problems you have with this is people see this and they think, big brother, everything we see is everything I do is being tracked. But actually, you want to see what you're doing so that you can do better, so you can see, actually, no, I am spending way too much time working outside of my business hours, or I'm spending all this time multitasking in meetings. Maybe I should skip some of those meetings because I'm clearly not paying attention to them. It allows you to make different choices, but you can opt out of all of this. If you look at this and think that this is terrifying, there is an option to go in and say, actually, no, don't collect my data, don't present me this information. And if you do that, it actually stops your data being calculated into this company average. So you can hide if this is a frightening concept. But actually, I find it really interesting in terms of showing what you can do, seeing the things that you can, how you're behaving, what you want to be doing, what makes it, and how you want to do better with your time. So the next of my elements to talk about was meeting broadcast, and this is something that's come to Skype for Business, and this is a different way of presenting content, presenting webinars. So the one we're actually on today is more like a collaborative meeting. You can have people join in, have discussions, have conversations, but what we really want sometimes is just to broadcast information to a large group of people and to be able to secure it and control it. So if you want to present information to your members, but you don't want them to be able to pass the link on to a non-member or things like that, where you can present this content controlled to a secure list of people you trust. You can also provide video on demand, so you can record the meetings, have an archive, let people use them, and have a controlled audience participation, have voting panels, have Q&A panels that allow people to participate, but in a way that you can control. Another of the big features which has come to Skype for Business is PBX in the cloud. So PBX is something that generally, that's a fairly technical term, but essentially it's what controls your phone system. And with this, you can use Office 365 as your phone system. So I can go to Skype, I can type in a phone number of a mobile phone, of an ordinary landline number, and call them directly from Skype, using Office 365 to route that and to manage that. But you've also got functionality within the management of this. So I can delegate calls to somebody else. A PA can answer the phone and then route the call to a colleague. You've got call history. And one of the most exciting features, the ability to put music on for people who are on hold. And coming back to the rest of Office 365, we're starting to get better integration with the other pieces. So actually getting the voicemails integrated with Exchange Online. So when somebody leaves you a voicemail using Skype for Business, it gets saved as an audio file and emailed to you. So you've got that file sitting there in your email that you can listen to at your leisure. One of the other new features, and this is actually very new, is something called Flow. And this is currently in preview. And this allows you to build some very quick workflows, some very quick processes, and not just connecting Office 365. You'll notice I said in the slide connectors to cloud solutions, and that can actually be a whole range of different cloud solutions. And it comes with a bunch of templates so you can get started quickly. So I'm just going to jump back out to my desktop. And this is the flow canvas. This is the design space for creating a workflow using Flow. And here's one I've made earlier, and it's a fairly simple one. So a file gets created in SharePoint, an approval email goes off to somebody using Exchange Online with an option to either approve or not. And if they select approve, then we go down here and actually the file gets moved to another SharePoint location and then a confirmation email is sent. So very, very simple. And I can start adding actions from a whole long list of pre-populated actions. And here's what I mean in terms of the cloud services. So there's all sorts of things. So I can do things with Blogger, Box, Dropbox, Instagram, a whole load of things, and I can keep coming down this list. I can find more and more features, more and more things that I might want to integrate with. So I can create items in SharePoint, I can send emails using Exchange, I can add things to a OneDrive for Business. You're connecting the different cloud services, whether they're Microsoft or non-Microsoft, into these workflows. So on the face of this is really quite useful, and you can build these things really quickly. But you may notice on this list of SharePoint things, we don't actually see move file. And that's the reason I have on this left. You create a file in the new location and then delete it from the old location, because there isn't actually a button for just moving it. And this is actually something that can get quite frustrating quite quickly. If you're trying to do complex workflows, you start having to do awkward fiddly workarounds to do even quite simple things. So Flow is very, very quick to start with, very, very quick to create things in, especially if you use the templates. But if you try and do things which are complex, if you try and do things which are particularly sophisticated, you start running into the limits quite quickly. So for that case, we still recommend using a third-party workflow solution. But if you're doing something simple, you can actually do things like save my email attachments to a SharePoint document library, and there is a template right there. I can come down here and actually save tweets on a hashtag into a SharePoint list, and there is a template right there. So for simple 2, 3, 4 step workflows, you can build some quite nice things quickly. So let's go back to my slide deck. So that's Flow. It's still in preview at the moment, and as I said, it's fairly simple at the moment. If you're looking at workflow in any sophisticated way, consider a third party, but if you're just doing something quite simple, it's worth looking at. Power Apps is another thing which is in preview, and this is a tool to allow non-developers to build quick apps for phones and tablets. And these are sitting on top of a single data source, and you can build essentially a user interface to that data source. So if you want to be able to surface some fields from a database and allow people to query them, but you don't want to give them access to the database, you can build a little app using Power Apps to do that. Again, like Flow, it's designed to be quick and simple, but that means you do sometimes run into limits in terms of what you're trying to do with those data. But if you're just doing a quick read-write action, you can build these applications without needing to have developer skills, without needing to be a coder in order to create those things. Now we get to the world of security. And there's actually a couple of elements within Office 365 now. So advanced threat protection is one. There's also advanced threat analytics, and I've kind of rolled them together into one slide, but there's separation between them. But advanced threat protection gives you a number of features around controlling your systems, around making sure that you stay safe from outside threats, including what has to be the winner for the coolest name of a Microsoft feature set, the detonation chamber. And this is essentially for opening risky attachments. So if somebody sends you an email that's got an executable file attached to it, Exchange Online will look at that and think, that could potentially be harmful, that could be a virus, that could be something dangerous. And what actually happens is that attachment is taken into an area which is isolated from the rest of the system. So it can be open, the attachment can be opened there without risking it doing any damage to your computer, to Office 365 in general, without risking it installing a virus on your Windows machine, because it is kept in isolation. So the detonation chamber is a sort of, the thing gets put in here, it gets opened. If it's dangerous, great, it's not done any damage, we now know it's dangerous. If it's not dangerous, the system will then just say, okay, we'll let this attachment through because it's tested. And the second bullet point, dynamic delivery, is using this because but trying to allow this safety without delaying the email getting to you, because it does take a little bit extra time for these files to be opened and tested in the detonation chamber. So what actually happens with dynamic delivery is essentially you get the information in your inbox saying, hey, you've got an email, and the details of the body of the email, who it was from, all the rest of the normal information. But the attachment isn't there. Instead, you get a little notification saying, we're just checking that this attachment is safe. Once the testing's done, the attachment, if it is safe, gets then added to the email. And the idea being that you can see what's going on, you can still see the email and interact with it, but without having to wait for that testing to take place, but at the same time you stay safe. And if actually you don't read your email instantly, you may actually get the attachment pushed through before you even realise that it wasn't there to begin with. Similarly, you've got time of click protection. So if you click on a URL, the system will actually again open that in the detonation chamber just to check that the site's safe before passing it through. So you can have these things essentially to test out what's going on. And then all of this, you've got reporting and you've got the analytics. So I mentioned advanced threat analytics, and this is having intelligence to your login behavior. So looking at who are you, how do you normally log in? Do you normally log in from this location, from this type of machine, on this IP address with these credentials, and suddenly somebody's logging in from a different type of machine in the middle of India? Is that a challenge? Is that somebody trying to break into your account? So you can look at the tracking of what's normal behavior and flag up things which might be potentially dangerous. And actually where this is really great is if you start hooking this into something like multi-factor authentication. So if you do start noticing that a particular login attempt seems fishy, you can make them do extra steps to verify who they are. One of the other things to talk about when you're talking security is actually compliance. So those of you that have been using Office 365 may be familiar with data loss protection. So this is something that's been there in Exchange Online for a little while now. And the concept is there are certain types of data which are sensitive, which you worry about getting sent outside your business. And the default example people always use is a credit card number as a 16-digit number. You see that 16-digit number and you think, that looks suspiciously like a credit card number. And what you can do is you can have pattern detection on other types of numbers as well, or other combinations of numbers and letters. And you can say, okay, that particular combination, that looks like a national insurance number. That one looks like a passport number. And you decide what do you want to do if you see some of these data types. So there's a number that come out of the box. You can then go and write your own for your company data, the factors that matter to you. And in email, that's things like making somebody give a business justification for why they're sending out an email with 20 credit card numbers on it, or blocking it, or making it go through a second stage approval. And I said this has been around for a while. So why is it in the What's New webinar? Well, because it's come to SharePoint Online, and you can now use this in terms of legal holds. So you can go in and do e-discovery, you can do holds, you can do reporting on data that is potentially sensitive. So you can go and do e-discovery and say, okay, how many files in this site collection have got credit card data? How many files have got passport numbers? How many files have got some unique data type which you care about in your business? And that allows you to sort of track whether you've got risks of this data leaking. One of the other things is deletion policies. And this is something that you could do in SharePoint before, but it's become a lot easier. And I will just jump out to my demo again. So here in SharePoint, I have a brand new site collection template, which is the Document Deletion Policy Center. Microsoft going back to their usual standard with naming there. But what I've got here is I've got some policies. So my sample document deletion policy, so this is the one it comes out of the box with. So when I come into this, we've got recycle bin. So if something hasn't been modified in a year, 3 years, or 5 years, move to the recycle bin. And it's set the default one to being 5 years. So you can apply this rule and say, okay, any content that hasn't been touched in 5 years, you're probably safe moving it to the recycle bin. But you can come in and you can create your own templates, you can customize this, you can decide, do you want to actually delete the things or rather than just recycle them? And then you can start applying them as policies. So this is where we start getting the improvement over previous iterations of SharePoint. I can apply a standard deletion policy to all of our project sites and say, okay, we don't want to clutter up the system and use up our memory allocation. Therefore, when somebody creates a new team site, it will delete stuff after 3 years. You come up with that as a default, and you can, if you like, allow people to override it if for whatever reason they need different rules for their site. But this makes it easier to apply rules across site collections or across templates and have a default setting of, yeah, this stuff needs to get tidied up. Because what you don't want to have happen is to have your system just fill up with stuff that isn't relevant, that isn't needed anymore. So come back to my slide deck, and the other bullet point on there is just there have been some improvements to encryption. So if you're concerned about people having access to your data when it's in Office 365, the encryption has been improved. And now the last one of my list is something called Stream. Not last, second last, nearly there. And Stream is essentially video streaming technology. So you can host your videos and allow people to view them, to stream them. You can create your own little mini YouTube channel. And actually you can organize the content into channels and say, okay, this is all of our marketing videos, this is all of our case study videos, this is all of our internal help file videos, and allow people to search them, to find them, to access them. And again, those of you familiar with Office 365 might be sitting there going, didn't they have Microsoft Office Video? Isn't that the same thing? And very, very similar. And actually, Stream is a replacement for Office 365 Video that aims to do everything you could do in Office 365 Video, but it's taking advantage of some of the new Azure video capabilities on the platform in order to make sure that things run smoothly when you do video hosting. And final piece, Power BI. So again, this is one that's been around a little while, but it's one that's been constantly developing. So Power BI is a business intelligence front end. You can create very nice reports, very nice dashboards that present your data in an attractive visual way, and you can have a very interactive experience, so you can go in and see what's going on with your data. And this is one of those things that has been getting lots and lots of tweaks ever since it's been released. So new connectors for different types of data, new visualisations for presenting the data in new ways, the ability to connect files in SharePoint and OneDrive. And this one I think is actually really important because so many businesses have vast amounts of important data sitting in Excel spreadsheets. And yes, in an ideal world, we would actually bring that into a data warehouse and do proper data cleanup and analytics on a database level. But the fact is, if you want to get started quickly, it's really powerful to be able to just take those spreadsheets, put them into SharePoint or OneDrive and say, that's my data source. I want to build my reports on that. And it allows you to get to your business intelligence very, very quickly. And on that theme, one of the recent developments is the Publisher add-on for Excel. So it used to be that you would create your Excel file, and then either you would stick it in SharePoint and have to connect to it from Power BI, or you'd have to go to Power BI and choose to upload the file. Now you can do it directly from Excel. You can create your charts, you can update your data, and then click to publish to Power BI without leaving Excel. And little minor one, report formatting. If you want to change the colour scheme or put a logo on the background, you've now got more flexibility in terms of design. So let's actually have a quick look at Power BI. So I've opened up into a dashboard and I've got various visualizations, various data types of things that interest me, various things I care about. And this is actually retail data. I can come in and look at sales and marketing data that's being pulled through from Dynamics CRM. And we can come in and we can look at the details. We can drill into this and go to a report which might have more data. And you'll notice filters pane. So you can start, once the data loads, filtering and interacting with your data. So we can come in and we can see various charts. I can click on a bar in one and it will show me it filtered on the others, show me how that data relates to all of the other different pieces. But the nice thing about this is actually you can get started with some pre-built content packs. So when I've gone to get data, we can create some data internally. We can connect, if you've got a data warehouse, if you've got a business intelligence backend, you can connect to that. But you can also come out and connect to a whole range of services that are available. And this is one of those areas that is constantly being added to. So we've got application insights if you're building apps in Azure. We've got Azure Mobile and Azure Audit Logs. So there's lots of various things in Azure, but there's also things from people who are not Microsoft. So we've actually got Google Analytics here. If I scroll down, we've got a whole bunch of non-Microsoft stuff. We've got Microsoft stuff. We've got Salesforce, so if you're using Salesforce for your CRM, you can actually stick Power BI on the front end. And this is one of those things where new content packs are showing up constantly. So if you are using a cloud service that doesn't have very good out-of-the-box reports and you want to do more reporting on it, it's worth coming here and giving it a check to see if there's been a connector built for it. Just going back to my workspace. One of the other things which is also worth noting is in terms of the visualisations. And new features, new visualisations come out of the box, but there's also a community of people who are creating different visualizations, different ways of presenting data, some of which are really quite fun. So I've got here this little aquarium. So this is one of those community parts, and actually each of these fish represents a block of data. So this big blue fish is the 888,000 of sales sold in home, whereas the small turquoisey one at the back is about half as much monetary value, so it's about half as big. So you've got different fun ways of presenting data other than the usual bar charts and tables and pie charts. So if you want to have a report that's just a little bit more fun, there are some really nice visuals out there that you can start playing with. So, jump back to my slides. So Power BI, we could spend a long time just on Power BI, but worth knowing that it is growing constantly, and as a front end, there is a lot of power to it. So that's been a very quick fly through of the new some of the new capabilities, some of the new features that are being turned on, and I just want to hand over to John to talk about how this fits in terms of the licensing and the subscriptions of Office 365.
Great, thank you, Jess. So all of the individual products that Jessica mentioned there are available as separate standalone subscriptions from Microsoft. But as you may be aware, Microsoft do create packages. So we've got Office 365, Enterprise E1, E3 and E5 suites. On this slide here I've concentrated on E3 and E5 purely because the E3 and E5 suites both include the actual Office client itself, so Office 365 Pro Plus, which is a locally installed client, but all of the additional functionality that Jessica spoke about there is all included within this new E5 suite. So as you can see there's three pillars: security, analytics and voice. So things like the advanced e-discovery and advanced threat protection are within the E5 suite, as are on the voice side of things the PSTN conferencing and cloud PBX, so allowing you to replace an on-premises PBX system. PSTN calling, which is on this slide, is an additional add-on to Cloud PBX. So if you license the E5 suite or Cloud PBX on its own with Skype for Business, the PSTN calling is an additional subscription that you would need to purchase on top of those. Just to kind of put together a licensing stack, I've also included the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite, which was recently renamed. Prior to the name change, it was EMS, so Enterprise Mobility Suite. Microsoft have now introduced two flavors. So you've got E3 and E5. Again, just E5 providing additional functionality on top of the E3 suite. So the reason I've put that in there is just to show you from a licensing perspective, when you're moving to Office 365 or thinking about moving to Office 365, what you can do is license your on-premises estate. So here in the grey boxes we've got what is today known as the Core CAL or the Enterprise CAL suite, and then we've added on to that some additional technologies, so Office and Skype for Business plus CAL, so if you want to do on-premises voice. And then on the right hand side we've got our cloud solutions. So for example, Skype for Business Online Plan 1 and Plan 2. And as you can see, they kind of link up to their on-premises equivalents. So when you buy a suite from Microsoft, you get dual access rights. So you could buy E3 suite, for example, to access both Skype for Business Online Plan 2 and also Skype for Business on-premises server. So if you're not ready to move all of your workloads to Office 365 just yet, you can use these cloud licensing suites as a way of kind of accessing on-premises servers as well as the cloud. In terms of Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite, that effectively covers your infrastructure servers. So again, gives you rights to access things like Microsoft Intune, but also gives you the rights to continue accessing a Windows server on premises. Now again, in true Microsoft fashion, with Windows, they've introduced an E3 and E5 offering as well. So E3 is what you've kind of been used to, which is Windows 10 Enterprise. The E5 offering effectively adds on a Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection. And again, the reason I've thrown that in there is because there is a suite of products which is called the Secure Productive Enterprise. Again, there's two flavors, E3 and E5, but both of those include either Office 365 E3 and Office 365 E5. So summary there is there are many different ways of buying these services from Microsoft. So I'll just encourage you to contact one of the Bytes account managers to talk through the options there in terms of moving to cloud. And that's it from me, Jess.
Okay, thank you for that. So that wraps it up for the content today. If you want to get in touch and have a longer conversation or talk about any of these points in any more detail, there's an email address on the screen for you, michael.mcdade@core.co.uk. We also have upcoming events, so there's another webinar coming soon, date to be confirmed, around Windows 10 provisioning and security. And we've also got an in-person face-to-face seminar on the 24th of November if you want to go into the SharePoint side of this in more detail. And now I'm going to open it up for questions. So we have put the audience on mute. You can, if you want, come off mute and ask a question, or preferably use the instant messenger window. So if you've got any questions for myself or John,